Greetings, story lovers. Pull up a chair and open your ears, for I have a tale or two just waiting to unfold. He walked barefoot from the Australian outback straight into Hollywood, and in doing so, he changed cinema forever. This is the story of David Gulpilil, the man who didn't audition for his first film. He was discovered while dancing. Imagine this, it's 1969. A film crew is deep in the remote wilderness of Arnhem Land, Australia. They're searching for something real, something authentic for their new movie. And that's when they see him, a young Yolngu man, performing traditional ceremonies with a grace and power that's simply breathtaking. They didn't need to see him read lines from a script. They saw something far more important, something the silver screen had been missing for 100 years. Truth. At just 16 years old, David Gulpilil stepped into the film Walkabout and showed the entire world what Indigenous storytelling looked like when it was told by Indigenous voices. There was no caricature, no harmful stereotype. There was just a young man moving through his ancestral land with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged to it completely, who understood its every secret. The film industry had never seen anything like him. Over the next 5 decades, he became the face of a movement he never asked to lead. He was the star of iconic films like Storm Boy, Rabbit Proof Fence, and The Tracker. Then came Charlie's Country, a film that earned him the Best Actor award at the prestigious Cannes Film Festival. He was the first Indigenous Australian ever to win that honour. But each role he took on carried a weight far beyond simple entertainment. Every performance was an education. It was a window into cultures that mainstream cinema had spent generations either erasing completely or distorting into something unrecognizable. Gulpilil was correcting the record, one powerful performance at a time. But his life was a constant balancing act, lived between two worlds that rarely understood each other. He would fly to Hollywood to shoot a film, surrounded by the glamour and chaos of the industry, and then he would return to Arnhem Land to fulfill his duties as a Yolngu man. These weren't things he could just put on hold. They were his responsibilities, participating in ceremonies, honoring kinship obligations, and playing his part in keeping his ancient culture alive. The collision of these two vastly different worlds took a heavy toll. He struggled publicly with alcohol. He faced legal troubles that made headlines. He battled serious illness, yet through all of it, he kept telling stories. Why? Because that is what his people, the Yolngu, had been doing for 65,000 years. It was in his blood, his spirit. In 2021, as lung cancer weakened his body, he gave one final, unforgettable performance. The film was titled My Name is Gulpilil. But it wasn't just another documentary. It was a final reckoning. Lying in his hospital bed, Gulpilil narrated his own life story with the same raw, unflinching honesty he brought to every single one of his roles. There was no Hollywood polish, no sanitized, feel-good narrative. It was just a man reflecting on a life lived fully, painfully, proudly, and always on his own terms. He passed away in November 2021, surrounded by his family, back in his homeland. But here is the crucial part of his story, the part that most people don't fully realize. Before David Gulpilil, Indigenous Australians were virtually invisible in their own country's cinema, except as silent background characters, or worse, as harmful, one-dimensional stereotypes. After him, everything changed. A whole generation of Indigenous filmmakers, actors, writers, and storytellers could finally point to his work and say, "That's possible, I can do that." He didn't just open a few doors that were closed, he walked straight through walls that the industry didn't even know were there. His true legacy isn't measured in box office numbers or the awards sitting on a shelf. It's measured in the faces of young Indigenous artists who now see themselves reflected on screen, not as a footnote, but as the main character. His legacy is in the audiences around the globe who learned, through his films, that Aboriginal culture isn't a relic of the past confined to a museum. It's living, breathing, evolving, and absolutely essential to understanding Australia and the world. It's in every story now, told with dignity instead of distortion. "I am a storyteller," he once said, "and my stories are the stories of my people." For over 65,000 years, his people kept their stories alive through ceremony, song, and art. David Gulpilil took those ancient stories and gave them to the world through the modern language of cinema. He ensured that generations who might never get the chance to visit Arnhem Land would still hear the voices that echo across that ancient, sacred land. He proved that representation isn't just a buzzword or a box to tick. It's transformative. It changes how people see the world and, more importantly, how they see themselves. He proved that authenticity can't be acted. It has to be lived. And he showed us that the most powerful, most moving performances come from people telling their own truths, not from someone else's idea of what their truth should be. So, this brings up a question for all of us. What stories are you carrying that only you can tell? What truth are you holding back because you think the world hasn't made space for it yet? David Gulpilil didn't wait for permission, he didn't wait for the industry to be ready for him. He showed up, he brought his whole authentic self, and he changed everything. The doors he kicked open are still open. The path he carved through the wilderness is still there. And right now, somewhere in the world, a young person from a community that has been silenced or ignored for too long is watching one of his films. And they're thinking, if he could do it, maybe I can too. That's not just a legacy, that's a revolution. One story at a time. Thanks for watching. If you were inspired by this story, please like and subscribe for more content that celebrates the people who changed our world. Every story has its end, but another is waiting just up here. And if you seek more tales, be sure to subscribe below.